Before today's show, I'd like to dedicate today's recording to Kay. Without your friendship back in the day, I wouldn't have seen so many movies. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I'll leave to you. We may have lost touch over the years, but the memories are still good ones. Rest in peace, my friend.
Happy Halloween, 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 happy Halloween, silver shamrock. Happy Halloween, 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 happy Halloween, silver shamrock. It's time.
That's right, it's time. Hey there, cultists, and welcome to our Cult Classics Little Mystery Tour. Today we'll be picking up a six-pack and boarding the bus to Santa Mira for our tour of the Silver Shamrock Factory, courtesy of Conal Cochran himself, as we take a look at what some would describe as the red-headed stepchild of the Halloween franchise, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And if it's confusing to you regulars who are perhaps expecting analysis on another movie this time around, no, you didn't hear incorrectly last time. It's just that due to circumstances beyond our control, our scheduled look at killer clowns from outer space may not be quite going ahead as planned. It will get here, but when is anyone's guess at this moment. But fear not, we here at Cult Classics couldn't let Halloween come and go without a spooky review of some kind, so why not take a look at a movie named in honor of the holiday spirit? It may not be the film we needed, but right now it's the one we deserve. And what better film to cast our mass gaze upon than the infamous standout of that franchise? And let's be honest here, everyone and their dog will be looking at Michael Myers right now. We here at CC, we like to do things differently. So settle back, ignore what's going on around you, shut out the boss, ignore the kids on the bus, and you there in Hastings, put that finger down. The other driver's ignoring you anyway. So for the next hour and change, come with us. And don't forget the big giveaway after the show. But as usual, I won't be doing this alone. We've got some more guests joining us here at the Rose of Shannon Motel for our discussion on this one. Two newbies, in fact, not just to Cult Classics, but Silver Screen in general. I just hope they've packed well as I'm travelling light this week. I've had a lot of practice. So first up, we've got political staffer and recent winner of award for flash fiction. It's Athena. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great. How are you doing today?
I can't complain. I'm getting ready for Halloween, so I'm excited to be on the show and review an interesting movie. I think that you're right, describing it as the red-headed stepchild. It was I think it came out, oh gosh, I was just a little kid, and this movie came out on TV a lot. So I avoided it since all the other kids said, that doesn't have Michael Myers in it. So I'll tell you a little bit more about how I finally watched it and how I came to love this movie.
Nice. So would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. Okay, so as you said, I'm a political staffer. Right now, politics in America, it's a little bit like Mad Max right now out here. So I think that's the best way to describe it. I feel like I'm strapped onto a vehicle and we're all just going forward. And it's something else. So I'm glad to have Halloween break coming up, and we have our other big holidays, but I'm a big fan of Halloween. So that's what I'm interested in. And I'm also a mystery writer. I won an award in 2019 for my flash fiction with Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine. So I love anything spooky.
Well, I know you're quite the fan of this one today, so I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on it. So, also joining us today, he's an author, musician, filmmaker, content creator. One might say he's a Renaissance man. He's the host of Planet Hex. It's Andrew. How are you doing, fella?
Hello, mate. Thank you for having me on. I'm Andrew Haunt. That's Haunt with a W, because I think I'm the only person, bar my wife, that can still get it right. I do Planet Hex on YouTube, where I talk about a lot of VHS tapes. The other thing I am probably most known for is my book, VHS 8 My Brain, of which I just put a revised version out. It's like 9 years old now, the original one, so I've done a revised version, corrected all the bits I left out and made it better, and that's out now. Yes, I've been playing with a friend's band again. I had a break of like 16 years from performing on stage. Been doing that again, and that's hilarious. That is a great deal of fun. And yeah, I'm really pleased to be here, especially because I get to talk about Halloween 3, which I have rewatched today. And it held up. I only saw it like a month ago. I've got to rewatch it for this again. And more than happy to rewatch this. I think you may, with myself and Athena, you maybe have some biased guests toward this film in favour of this film today.
That's okay. I think it might be three of us, if I'm being completely honest. I should state that Andrew was originally slated to appear with us on the Killer Clowns episode because it means so much to him personally. Luckily, he's also able to adapt rather well. So my thanks, man, and apologies for that little mishap there with the episodes.
I will talk about anything that has practical effects in it and came out on a tape, basically.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that leads us into the next section, actually. So thank you, obviously, both for joining us here on Cult Classics. Now, as has become tradition since we started this one up, we ask all our first timers the same question. Gives the audience a little glimpse into their psyche. Plus, it also allows Mike and me to have a little wager on the outcome. But if I had to put it to you guys on the spot and ask you what you would consider your all-time favourite cult movie, what would it be? And I'm going to go to you first on this one, Andrew. You're a self-confessed tapehead, so I'm counting on you to give us a good one right out the gate.
Right, straight away, I will say Trick or Treat, 1986, with all the rock music in it by Fastway, featuring the tale of metalhead Eddie Weinbauer, who accidentally resurrects his fallen metal idol Sammy Kerr, who comes back as a superpowered Freddy-style demon, but with lots of hairspray, and starts laying waste to the neighborhood. I really, really love that movie, and I have it on far too many formats. I have the video posters. I've got the soundtrack. I've had the soundtrack for years, but I just went and checked what it was going for on eBay, and I'm in two minds now. Do I depress myself and sell it? No. Because it's quite a wodge I was surprised about. But yeah, I'm absolutely obsessed with Trick or Treat. The 1986 one, not the 2009 one. It has its detractors, and to be honest, in some ways I am one of those detractors, because it is not perfect by a long way. But I saw it at an impressionable age, as I did many of the things that I'm still into now. But I really love that dearly. It spoke to me as a person, with the exploits of Eddie Weinbauer as like a bullied metalhead teenager. That was me growing up, and it also spoke to me because I got to see a demon blow all the bullies up, and that was great.
Isn't that the one? With,
Trick or Treat.
Isn't that the one with Gene Simmons?
It has Gene Simmons in it playing a DJ who is a friend of Eddie, the main character, and it gives him the cursed record, the unreleased record that has the soul of Sammy Kerr in it. It also has a cameo from Ozzy Osbourne. At the height of his infamy as the Prince of Darkness, it has a cameo from Ozzy Osbourne as a TV evangelist, which is just deliciously ironic.
Oh, goodness. I remember that. I think I've only ever seen it once. It came out as part of a range back in the day of like horror movies to buy, that and Dream Demon and Hills of Eyes. So
You're thinking of Palace Video, the Palace Video collection that had
that's the one. Oh,
brightly coloured cover.
Was it green?
I don't have that. Yeah, that one was green. I don't have that edition, but I do have the original X-Rental one with the gold Palace box.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, that was Palace Video. That also introduced me to Dream Demon, Evil Dead 2, Basket Case. There was some great Night of the Demons. There's some great stuff in there.
There is. Oh God, you've brought back so many memories, man. We'll have to. I've not seen it since then, so we might have to do that on Cult Classics and get you on board for that one.
Go for it. I will defend it to the day I die, that film.
Oh, fantastic. And how about you, Athena? If you had to come up with just one choice, desert island pick, if you will, what would be your all-time favourite?
The first one that popped into my head, and I'm going to go a little off the track because I wanted to pick a horror film. I love all the ones Andrew mentioned, but I think I'm going to go with one from the Emperor of Cult Classics, which is a David Lynch film, Wild at Heart. I saw that movie and those quotes constantly go through my head. It's a movie I love so much. I almost don't want to watch it too often because I want it to be this celebration and this almost rite of passage every time I watch it. Like I feel like I'm watching it all over again. And I think that a big reason I love that movie so much, it's a romance for the rest of us, people who are kind of a little bit strange. And David Lynch, I think, always is able to take those strange thoughts we have, people who are writers, people who are creative, and he takes it into this whole other place, like, let me tap into this other part of your consciousness. Have you thought about this? And then turns you upside down. And I think Wild at Heart did that in such an interesting way. I'm also a big Nicolas Cage fan, and I think he is so charming in that movie.
I do love the Wizard of Oz aspects in that one.
Yes. Yeah, and also interesting thing to note with Halloween 3, the man who played Conal Cochran, he was in Twin Peaks.
Yes.
He was, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I completely forgot that you were a fellow Lynch fan.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, I think I posted something in the podcast's Facebook group about, it was a picture of David Lynch and John Waters, and they were at a Bob's Big Boy shaking hands. And there's something about those image with those two facing each other smiling, that there's something that's very powerful about two creative people getting together, and it's really radiating off both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Wild at Heart was my first Lynch movie. Yeah, and my family and friends have regretted that ever since. So, yeah, I can well understand that. So that's awesome. We've got some solid choices there, and I'm sure you've already got some folks out there arguing both for and against them. So, with that already,
I've got to say, Athena's is way more classy than mine.
Oh,
that's
man,
a way classier choice than Trick or Treat. Nice one, Athena.
Mate, you should see some of the others that people have chosen. It's like, honestly, it's like watching an episode of Mystery Science Theater. Right, so, yep. It's time to take a look at the movie at hand, which is, of course, Tommy Lee Wallace has directed Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Now, after the relative success of the previous two installments, naturally, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill were the first port of call for the studio when the possibility of a third Halloween movie arose. However, the pair agreed to do so only on the proviso that it would not be a direct sequel to Halloween 2 and Michael Myers not be the focus of the new installment. Carpenter originally envisioned the Halloween films as an anthology series of movies, sort of a big-budget Twilight Zone, telling a different Halloween-related tale in each piece. However, studio pressure led to Halloween 2 being a direct follow-up to the first movie. Now, with Halloween 3, the creators behind the franchise finally felt free to pursue that original anthology approach. And in this instance, the idea behind it was to create what they would term a pod, as in pod person movie, rather than a knife movie, to give the film a different take and a different vibe to its predecessors. To this end, the producers enlisted British science fiction writer Nigel Neal to write the original screenplay, primarily because Carpenter admired his Quatermass series. Neal stated his script did not include horror for horror's sake, adding the main story had to do with deception, psychological shocks rather than physical ones. Neal later had his name removed in dispute of alterations made to his initial outline. Now, filming took place around Loleta, apologies if I pronounce that wrong, California, shortly afterwards, and the movie premiered in the US on October 22nd, 1982, to mostly negative reviews and poor word of mouth. Not only was it the worst performing Halloween movie at that point, but it also lost out to other horror movies of the year such as Poltergeist, Creepshow, and Friday the 13th Part 3. Moviegoers were expecting Myers again, and it didn't give them what they wanted, which added to the poor showing. As a result, Carpenter sold the rights, with the new owners bringing Myers and Loomis back in '88, with a little explanation of how they survived. To this day, Halloween 3 holds only a 50% score on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. However, in recent years, the film has seen a re-evaluation in some corners, gaining new fans and re-establishing its reputation as a cult film. And for those of you interested out there, Halloween 3 is currently available to stream, as well as being available on DVD, Blu-ray, 4K. And like one of our guests today, if you're a tape head and you're lucky, you can probably still find a copy on VHS, Betamax, hell, even Laserdisc, should you so be inclined. So
you can on all three.
Once again, you have? Oh, man, my
no, you
respect.
can get it on all three. It's cheap as
Yeah.
well. Don't we? Yeah.
Oh, do you have it?
I have it on tape. I don't have it on Laserdisc, but it is an easy one to come by because, again, like you said, it's not seen as one of the more popular ones.
No. So as usual, what I normally do now, I've got to ask you here, what was your first experience with this one? Athena's kind of started giving us that, but I'm going to come over to you in a sec and see where you first saw it. I think the first time I viewed this, it was late at night on BBC One. I was very young. It was the first movie in the franchise I'd seen. By that point, it was well into its, I don't know, fourth, maybe fifth installment, and it had the reputation, as these things often do, in the school playground. I sat there expectantly waiting for Myers to show up, and waiting, and in the end feeling gypped that, a commercial aside, he wasn't in there. I was disappointed, of course, but at the same time, I found the premise utterly terrifying. So the next time it was on, I sat through it again. And the next time, I think around that time, the BBC was showing this thing every few months, or at least it felt like it. I don't know how much the money they paid, but they were getting their money's worth. I'm sure I came to be a fan of this one through exposure alone. But every single time it was on, I'd just be glued to the screen. I eventually got it on disc, and now it's a perennial in this house. Every year without fail, I get to see Tom drink, kick ass, and take names. So how about you guys? How did you first come to this one? And again, I'll come to you first, Andrew.
I think I probably saw it on some of the same screenings you did. But like with like what you said, it didn't have Michael in it. I saw this at the same time that I discovered the Friday the 13th TV series that doesn't have Jason Voorhees in it.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So I thought, oh, brilliant, Friday the 13th TV series. Jason never showed up in that. Watched Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Michael never showed up in that. I'm like, what is everyone talking about? Where are these characters? What's going on? But yeah, I really liked it. And even though it didn't have Michael in it, I loved the feel of it and that sort of weird atmosphere. I would liken the atmosphere of it to Phantasm because it kind of crosses sci-fi and horror into this sort of Twilight Zone-esque thing. But yeah, I saw it around at the same time, but I was wondering what the hell was going on because there was no Michael. But over the years, it has grown to be my favourite by far of the series because it has no Michael. Because I think Michael's been a bit done to death now, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah, I think I'm joining you on board that bus. So yeah, Athena, how about you? You started to go into it. So what was your first experience of this one?
My first experience was on television. It started to run a lot since it was a movie that was, well, free, since it didn't have the greatest reviews. And I had the same experience you both did. Everyone on the school playground said, it doesn't have Michael Myers, not worth your time. So then, okay, who's going to be a better influence on you than your friend, you're hanging out with and telling you, nah, it's not worth your time. You think, okay, whatever. So I'd skip it. And then one day, absolutely nothing else was on. I thought, okay, why not? I'll just watch it because, hey, it's something to watch. So I turned it on and honestly, it blew my mind. It was probably, it came out in 1982 and I would have been 3 years old. So this was, since it had been played on TV for a while, I was, maybe I'd say 11, maybe 12. And it introduced me into something that I had not seen in horror and I had not seen in most movies at that age was the ending. It did cross into that sci-fi with androids, and I always loved that stuff, Star Wars, Dune, all of those types of movies. I loved the 1970s movies where, there was a surprise twist, somebody was an android, and this movie had everything. And it had this introduction to something in films where I think American films, what we're so used to, Die Hard and all the movies I love, Jurassic Park, this neat little ending where the hero saves the day and he kisses his lady and we all clap and cheer. And that's what Americans love. We go to the movies for it. We're still going to go see Jurassic Park movies and still cheering when the hero kisses the lady at the end and all the dinosaurs are back home and everyone's safe. So this movie ended on a whole other level where I was sitting there, the screen flashing like, wait, what happens now? And I said, I want to see more movies like that. it started to, instead of, oh, everything's wrapped up neatly, we all walk out smiling with our popcorn, it made me think, but okay, should I write a story? Can I write about why was Conal Cochran doing this? It left all these open ends, and I love that because cinema doesn't do that. When it does, it tends to get bad reviews because people are like, that didn't make any sense. I'm not entertained. I want to know what happened. And I started to explore French cinema after that because French cinema I found had a lot of movies. There was this movie called The Vanishing. I don't remember the title in French. Maybe one of Andrew might. But The Vanishing was then remade into an American movie and, of course, had a tied-up ending where the hero saved the day. And I was disappointed. I liked the French version where the hero didn't save the day. The hero woke up in this situation screaming. And seeing that in this movie, the ending is so powerful to me because it leaves you afraid. And I think that's where we can find true horror is when the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I just ask, were you both kind of into horror as a genre when you first saw it, or did this, was this the first stepping stone on your journey?
I'd already found it. I'd already found it through, like you'd mentioned, the have you seen this in the schoolyard? But my introduction to the genre was tapes. It was VHS tapes. It was in a corner shop. I was grotesquely underage, but they allowed me to rent in this corner shop Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, which is still one of my favorites, and A Day of the Dead, the Romero movie, and Trick or Treat, and Basket Case. And bear in mind, I was about 12. Can I rent these? Yeah, all right. And so I watched those, and I've never been the same since. And I've had a great time with it. So Halloween 3 was a little bit after that, but my introduction was very early.
And how do you think it ranks alongside, say the other ones that you've mentioned?
At the time, I didn't really see any as better than the others because I was still trying to learn about the genre and more about the genre itself. So I watched those, and I watched a lot of other lesser sequels before seeing the originals, like Hills Have Eyes 2, which is terrible, and what's the other one? Hills Have Eyes 2, and I've gone blank. There was another dreadful sequel, but I saw everything the wrong way round. So I didn't see what would be described as the classics until much later, mainly because the lesser sequels to things like Amityville 2 and so on, that was it. Amityville 2 were cheap. They were like $1.99 in the sale bins, and as a kid I could afford that. So it was largely dictated by pocket money.
Oh, nice. What about you, Athena? Was this your first, or?
I loved horror, I guess, starting about like 8 or 9 years old. I had older cousins who, they let me kind of watch whatever I wanted. That were my babysitters. So, of course, they wanted to watch horror movies and, the latest scary stuff and whatever everyone was talking about. So I guess I was like 9, maybe. I saw The Exorcist, which, as you can imagine, being 9 and seeing that, I was just like, whoa! And I loved it. I mean, I kind of, was like, my older cousins are like, it's not real. You're fine. I'm just like, okay. And being Catholic, I was just like running around. Oh my gosh, I was running around Catholic school, like, everyone, you gotta see The Exorcist. It was a great movie, and it's actually my favorite horror movie of all time. I mean, my favorite movie of horror of all time, I think we talked about this, Silence of the Lambs, but I think The Exorcist is the best one made. I think it's a work of art. I've read so much about it, the actors, the writers. I'm a big fan of the man who wrote that and I've read everything else he's written. And I think that's just one of the best made films of all time, and even surpassing horror genre. It's just one of the best films ever. And I loved Aliens. I saw that when I was really young, and then started watching all those movies. The first one I liked. I liked the second one a little bit better because watching Sigourney Weaver as Ripley was so instrumental in my personality as a young person. And really, being kind of a shy kid who just liked movies and liked to read, watching her as a heroine and what she did in Aliens really gave me the inspiration to be the strong, smart woman to go out and get into the field. I started getting into coding in college and wanting to be very powerful and do things with my life and get into science. And so, horror's been this great influence. I know it sounds crazy, but it's been this great influence on my personality and my life.
Well, I know for a fact now that you've instantly got a fan, because me and Mike argue often about which is the better, Alien or Aliens, and he goes for Aliens, so he'll be singing your praises right now.
It's a great movie.
That's because
it really
he's right,
is.
mate. He's
No,
right.
I'm still sticking with the original. Damn you all. Damn you all to hell. And so, Athena, how do you think this ranks alongside the other horrorings from the other horror offerings from that period? Does it still kind of tickle that fancy for you? Or
I think that because of some of the elements of this movie that were so different, it still really appeals to me. I still watch it, and I still, every time that ending gets me. I think that the acting was really good in it. Tom Atkins, for what it was, some of that, you can tell watching it, there is some B movie elements for the time for 1982. A lot of the effects are pretty, on par with some of the other films. And they didn't have a huge budget. So I try to take that into account, and they did really well with what they had. I think that because, I think that if we tried to compare the two movies, like The Exorcist and the Halloween 3, okay, you're obviously going to say, okay, The Exorcist is better made because of the directors they had, because of the storyline they had. Everybody, pitched in on that film, and also the star power they had, and same with something like The Shining. You have Jack Nicholson, of course you're going to have, and Stanley Kubrick, you're going to have this film that just blows everyone out of the water. Poltergeist, I think, too, had some of that star firepower. And Halloween 3, while the acting was a lot of fun, I would say, Tom, he reminded me a little bit of Chuck Norris in some scenes, which I love. But it's a little bit cheesy. So yeah. I would say you have to kind of almost appreciate it for what it is, where you're going to see him constantly putting his fists up in the air and waving them around, and it's got those sort of action movie B elements to it too.
Cool. Well, we'll take a look at your thoughts on specific elements shortly. But before we get to the actual discussion, we'll take our customary look behind the scenes. Now, as usual, while we've endeavoured to find something new for this section, the majority of this will be known to fans, probably even common knowledge. So if you don't want to have to sit through all this stuff, then I do recommend skipping ahead a few minutes. And as always, while the spoiler moratorium on these things have long since passed, if you've not seen the movie, and why not, it may be best to skip it and maybe the podcast entirely and return to us after you've viewed it, if you don't want this thing being ruined for you. So with that in mind, we'll start off on the behind the scenes section. So this will be where Mike chucks me that nice music. Right, determined to not go back to the well of Michael Myers, Deborah Hill had the idea to combine witchcraft with the computer age for Halloween 3, which was set to be directed by Joe Dante. After meeting with John Carpenter, the Gremlins director had agreed to helm the film, although at that point it still wasn't a sure thing if the sequel would get made at all. Soon after, however, Dante left the project to accept Landis and Spielberg's offer of directing Twilight Zone the movie, unsure if Halloween 3 would ever materialise, allowing Tommy Lee Wallace to take the reins. I know it got a lot of bricks thrown at it because it wasn't like the first two Halloween pictures, but that was what I liked about it, Dante said in a 2014 TV Star Online interview. I don't think Halloween 3 deserved the criticism it took. I thought it was a great concept. Now, back when he was still slated to direct, Dante suggested the award-winning British screenwriter Nigel Neal, who, as I said before, created the Quatermass character and was a veteran of Hammer Films. Neal wrote the first script but ultimately asked to have his name removed. Nigel had some lousy experiences in Hollywood, Wallace later recounted. From his perception, as a general rule, Hollywood had mangled his stuff. When he turned in his screenplay, any criticism that we gave him was going to be met with resistance. Nevertheless, Wallace praised Neal's script as moody, dark, and fascinating, later estimating that close to 60% of it survived Carpenter's rewrite and his own. Deborah Hill herself suggested Tom Atkins for the role of Dr. Daniel Challis, a veteran of Carpenter movies until this point. Atkins told Fangoria magazine back in the day as well, he liked playing the hero. He added, "I wouldn't mind making a whole career out of being in just horror movies," and it's done quite well for him. Stacey Nelkin, meanwhile, took the role of Ellie simply because she loved the character. She'd never seen the first two Halloween movies, and when she won the role, she thought she'd better watch the previous entries, and then quickly realised that they had zero connection to this one. Dan O'Hurley, for his part, meanwhile, stated that he had fun using the Cork accent of his native island, and he thoroughly enjoyed making the movie, but concluded, "I didn't think it was much of a picture, no." Now, the rest of the cast are entirely newcomers to the franchise. Laurie Strode herself, Jamie Lee Curtis, provides 2 voice cameos as the woman announcing the curfew on the loudspeaker and the telephone operator. Nancy Kyes, who was married to Tommy Lee Wallace at the time and plays Annie Brackett in the first 2 Halloween films, appears as Linda Challis, Dan's ex-wife. While Halloween 2's Michael Myers, Dick Warnock, plays an android assassin. Additionally, Atkins' wife at the time, Garn Stevens, has a role in the film playing Marge Gutman, the woman killed in the motel room by a silver Shamrock badge misfire. Now, the silver Shamrock jingle, hypnotically playing throughout the movie, is based on the melody from the traditional nursery rhyme London Bridge is Falling Down. Deborah Hill suggested it because it's catchy and perhaps more importantly, it's in the public domain. Wallace sang it, then sped it up, Alvin and the Chipmunk style, and he's also the voice of the announcer in the commercials. The jingle is played a total of 14 times in the movie. Now, the big Halloween 3, the masks that are advertised in the movie, consisted of 2 altered masks that were already in the Don Post Studios repertoire, the Skull and the Witch, and one made exclusively for the movie, the Jack-o'-lantern. While the company was sold to Paper Magic Group Incorporated, the rights were bought by California-based company Trick or Treat Studios, and replicas of the original have been available to the public since 2014. Now, the movie takes place from Saturday, October 23rd to Sunday, October 31st, dating this to 1982, the day of the film's release. They're chronologically accurate. Not only that, but in a mirror to reality, the children in the movie are told to wear their masks and watch television at 9 p.m. on Halloween night. In our world, the movie Halloween, the 1978 original, was broadcast on NBC at 9 p.m. on Sunday, October the 31st, 1982. When Cochran orders one of his humanoids to roll the Silver Shamrock commercial to the Kupfer family while they're being held in Test Room A, he presses the number 666 on the keypad. So, let's ram that home. The majority of the movie takes place in the fictitious California town of Santa Mira, the same setting as the 56 classic Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as a nod to that movie, proving that some residents just do not learn their lesson. See also, Gotham City and the town of Midsummer. The Silver Shamrock factory was actually a milk bottling plant in Leta, California. In recent years, the factory has been closed and marked for demolition due to being structurally unsound, which has resulted in souvenirs of the factory, i.e. bricks, turning up in enterprising eBay and Etsy stores all around the world. For Halloween 3 fans to own a piece of movie history, and if anyone out there has a spare one, please let me know at the usual address. Now, despite the movie being seen as a failure back in '82, when Dennis Etchison, using the pseudonym Jack Baker, wrote the novelization and released it that same year, the book proved to be a hit. It became such a bestseller, in fact, that the novel was reissued once again in '84. Now, Tom Lee Wallace blamed the studio's discomfort with the movie's dark ending for the weak marketing. Going back to what you were saying here, Athena, Wallace recounted in an interview with Yahoo, according to him, Carpenter stated, "Your ending is your ending. It's up to me, but I'll leave it in your hands. You decide." And I didn't think about that for a long time before I said, let's leave it as it is. And as soon as that decision was made, Universal gave up and decided not to support the movie. Though as negatively as Universal did view it, it could have been much worse. There's a rumour that the original ending credits, rather than music, would have played the sounds of screaming children dying. Ultimately, Wallace chose to cut to black before revealing whether Dr. Challis was able to get the TV commercial to stop playing, leaving the ending ambiguous. However, Atkins himself emphatically says Challis was able to save all of the children on that fateful night. At the Horror Hound convention in 2017, when asked if he was able to stop the commercial, Atkins answered, "You bet your sweet ass I did." So, yeah, that's good enough for me. So, yeah, I'm guessing you guys knew the majority, if all of that already, but was there anything among that pile of trivia you weren't aware of?
I didn't know that about Tom.
There's a lot I wasn't
said
aware
that.
of, actually.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that Tom had said, he'd confirmed that he saved the day, and that is such a Dan Challis thing to say, he loved, that's something I love about that character. We had talked a little bit about the movie, and you had asked about, did you have a favorite character? And I think most people, because Dan's so front and center in that, they don't get into Ellie as much as I think they possibly could have, but that could have been, maybe not having the budget or the script or whatever, or it's just so much on him. And I think, like most psychological horrors, it taps a little into, okay, this guy has got some troubles going on in his life. Having this troubled marriage in the past, and then Ellie comes into his life, the mystery woman. It reminds me of Blade Runner, like a woman coming in, I need your help. And that classic detective story that he finds himself wrapped up in. But he does take on that action hero idea of, I'm out here to save the day. I'm out here to save the kids, get rid of the bad guy. And that's awesome that he told everybody, yeah, I did it.
Yeah.
I'm a hero.
He could tell me day is night, and I would believe Tom Atkins. He's like that granddad that you just want, that just kicks ass everywhere. What about you, Andrew?
No, that's largely all new to me. But it's made me appreciate it even more, to be honest. I love all the stuff about him confirming that he saved everyone, but I do love the ambiguous ending, because if you're waiting for it to go off, you're waiting for that last repetition, for it to just roll the credits there. I thought was a really nice touch, a really mean but nice touch. But I love it that he confirmed that. One thing that I don't think was mentioned was that John Carpenter did the score with Alan Howarth for this, so he may not have directed the movie, but he did have a large hand in the, not that he's got large hands, maybe he has, I don't know, in doing the score for it. And if you listen to the closing theme over the credits, I did notice that there are some little motifs of the Halloween theme in there, but mixed with what sounds like the Peter Davison Doctor Who theme. So
I
it's
didn't
like the
pick
two
up
have
on
been
that. I'm
melded
gonna have to
together.
go back and re-listen to that. It's on my MP3 player. It's one of the soundtracks that is there, but I've never picked up on that, so I'll have to do that.
Give it a go. The closing titles. It's like Delia Derbyshire's playing the Halloween theme.
Oh my god! See, that's a selling point
really
right
good.
there.
But yeah, it is. It's good, isn't it? But I really like that. I really like the discordant soundtrack and how the soundtrack is used throughout the film as there's a lot of repetition of very short phrases of like 2 or 3 notes, and that repetition causes tension to build, I thought, in a lot of scenes, especially when Dr. Challis is in the factory and you don't know if he's going to get through the ventilation shafts, you don't know if he's going to get out of any of it, and he goes and sabotages the machinery. There's a lot of quite urgent repetition of very simple musical phrases in there that add a lot of atmosphere to it, I thought, and add that otherworldly feel to it as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, we do have a section for the sound design, but it's...
Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't mean it in that way. You've brought it up, and I think it's really good. It's, to my mind, I know that the main Halloween theme from the first movies, it's iconic, but I mean, there's not been a single soundtrack Carpenter's done that I do actively dislike. But I do find this one, as you're saying, so fantastically creepy. That I mean, I've got it with me wherever it goes because it's just a mood. I think the sound design is really well done on this movie.
It fits really well with it.
It does. Things like the little jingle that plays when they're announcing curfew. It just, I don't know if it's a result of me seeing it when I was young, but it just kind of fills me with dread. I mean, I should note to regular listeners that if it does sound that if it sounds suspiciously like hyperbole, that now on every movie we've covered lately has been making the statement, it's always on my player. It's because they pretty much are. The vast majority of my playlist these days is soundtracks to these movies, and it is in no way bullshit. It's 100% true.
Man, you live and breathe this stuff. I know that. I know that anyway. You're the real deal. You walk the walk.
See, this is the thing, mate. I think that about you. Without trying to sound like this is turning into a loving, I just think if there's anybody that we should get on this show, it's Andrew, because this guy knows his shit.
Thanks, mate.
Anytime, buddy. So I've got to ask you both. I mean, you hinted at it earlier. It's now over 40 years old, this movie. Do you think it still holds up?
I would say absolutely. I mean, I don't get on social media as much, but I know that, I guess it was maybe a couple of years ago, someone started a Halloween 3 Facebook group. And, this was a couple people I had met from a horror group. And we just, talk about all kinds of movies that we're watching and just post up a poster and someone will leave a comment like, oh, yeah, I saw that. I loved it. Or I haven't seen that yet. Is it worth watching? That type of thing. Pretty casual, or post up a few jokes. And so this group I was in had thousands of people, and I was surprised. I mean, I think it was over 20,000 people, and I was like, wow, this has a real following, this group, where, it was so cool. The people that ran it, they didn't just post up, watch this movie or whatever, like a casual group. They posted up fan art they had made. They posted up things they had made, t-shirts they had made, records, everything. I mean, they were super into it, and it was really cool that there was sort of this cult around this cult classic, and it's kind of funny to see things like that when people are that into one film, and how they'll just sit around and talk about it, as much as they possibly can. That's kind of their thing. So I would say that as long as a movie has any type of following, has people who will gather around and say, oh yeah, did you see XYZ? I loved it too. And the internet gives us that availability to do that over a film, or a filmmaker, or a book, or any topic that we want to talk about, then I think something is always going to hold up. And it's just because of the internet, nothing is ever gonna die. I think that there's some movies that I'll look up sometimes. Like, I love strange things, so I'll look up, weirdest movies of all time, weirdest video games of all time, the strangest things you can find on YouTube, and I find so many other people will gravitate toward those same things that I like, things that interest me, and want to talk about it and say, oh yeah, this is so creepy. Want to hear my experience? Want to hear what I think about this? So I think this is always going to be something that people are going to enjoy year after year. And because of the creative design of the movie, because of Silver Shamrock being a cool name, because of having this cool logo, I used it for my avatar because it's so neat. People like to make buttons out of it. People like to recreate the mask. They use this in movies. I know there's a movie called The Guest, and it's kind of another plot twist type movie about a guy in the military who shows up in this town, and nobody knows where he came from, and they bring him into their home thinking he's like somebody's deceased cousin or relative, and it's got all these plot twists. He took the masks from Halloween 3 and used them for a Halloween party in that film, and that's another kind of cult plot twisty type film. So I think that people are always going to enjoy this film for what it is, being on the internet, other filmmakers. I think they're going to take elements from it and continue to enjoy that and expand on it, which was something that I noticed when I was young, because it has those ambiguities, because it doesn't tell you the full story. I think a lot of people are like, why did the villain do this? what was going on with him? Who is this guy? He's not Michael Myers. He's not Jason Voorhees. He's not Freddy Krueger. Who is this weirdo? And that I think our culture here in America, we don't know enough about overseas. We don't know enough about Ireland and some of their history. Bringing in some of that Celtic witchcraft and that mythology is so cool for us. We loved it, and The Wicker Man is still so huge here. That's always going to be a huge film and a huge cult based around that film. Not the Nicolas Cage one, as much as I love him.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Oh, my eyes! Eyes! Ah!
That movie's ridiculous. I think it's always going to be something people love. It's always going to be notable for the artistic design. And it sounds like you two really do know a lot about the sound design. My only comment on that is Silver Shamrock, that theme is so clever because it takes London bridges. It makes it a little bit unrecognizable. And it does that something that's so creepy in most horror films is it sounds like children are sort of singing, or that high-pitched singing. And it makes it almost that alien type music. It's, you don't know where it's coming from. It's so catchy. And I find myself singing it a lot, and I'll post it sometimes online or something, like how many days until Halloween, Silver Shamrock. And people laugh because they recognize that. They know what it's from.
Brilliant. What about you, Andrew? You think it still holds up?
I would say that parts of it have dated. But on the whole, it holds up far better than most of the Halloween sequels that brought back Loomis, like in 4, 5, and 6, or Laurie Strode in 7. It's definitely better than Resurrection. By Christ. I do think it holds up in a lot of ways. The ambiguous ending. It chimes well with a lot of things like conspiracy theories about what technology can do to people's minds. I was reading and watching some stuff recently on the myth, the urban legend of the Polybius video game. I don't know if you're familiar with that, with a mysterious arcade cabinet that showed up in, I think it was Portland, Oregon in 1981.
I actually have a quarter cab of one of those.
Wow.
Yeah, when that was on Kickstarter, I had to get involved in that.
But I think it chimes well with all that sort of fear around technology and conspiracy theories that there is at the moment. What is everything for? What are things doing to us as a populace? And of course, those things get blown out of proportion. But this has the feel of something that is referred to as an urban legend. It seems like something has been, like an urban legend has been recounted and made into a movie. That's what this feels like to me. I think it was a really brave move to do something that didn't have Michael Myers in it. Especially after the success of the first two. Like you said earlier on, it was intended as like an anthology series, and I think that would have been far better than just retreading the old ground over and over and over again. So adding the different elements, like the Silver Shamrock song, which speaks to people on quite a primal level. With the repetition of it, it's going to get creepy. The idea of the masks and everyone having to watch at 9 p.m. with wearing the masks, that has aged well. Some things that haven't aged well for me. Some of the production design, of course, the technology. There's no social media, so it won't have that connection to a current generation that watches it anew. But there's one scene that bugged me when rewatching it today. Was when they go to the motel and they're trying to figure out what's going on. They pose as a couple and go to the motel, and Dr. Challis is like, I'm going to go. Shall I go and sleep in the car or see if I can get another room? And Ellie says, oh, why would you want to sleep in another room? And then they get together and it's like, mate, you've known her for like 5 minutes and you're helping her track down the people that crushed her father's head. That didn't age well. That sticks out a bit to me.
And it's done in such a kind of cheesy Days of Our Lives type way as well. It's like, where do you want to sleep, Dr. Challis? And you just say, oh, you can feel other people in the room physically cringe. And you just like, yeah, I get it. I'm joining you. It's just so cheesy. Yeah.
But as a story, it holds up really well as a horror movie, especially because it's not just a straightforward like witchcraft movie, but it does similar things to, say, well, not entirely similar, but it's got a sort of similar feel of mixing sci-fi and horror, I would say, is Evil Speak, the Clint Howard movie. And if either of you ever seen Evil Speak, where
Yeah.
he he carries out satanic rituals with a computer, but that mix of technology and knowing the fears around technology at the time, it's all going to enslave us, which it is doing now entirely. But and mixing that with a witchcraft element, I thought that was a really nice thing to do. And it wasn't just another slasher, which is what all the other Halloweens became. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, it's fine, mate. Talking about the writing, it is such a refreshing approach when you look at this franchise, and they have done Myers to death since this, and then everyone singles this one out as, well, this one doesn't fit in. It would have had they stuck with the original plan.
Yeah,
and I just think it's
imagine what they could have done with some more entries like 3.
Exactly, it's such a creepy premise, and I think it for want of going into another cult movie here, it takes the creep factor of Myers and turns it up to 11, because Myers is just a guy roaming the neighborhood with a knife. Cochran's plan is, let's just kill everyone.
And Cochran is getting into people's homes directly. It's not like one person that you can run around a corner away from. It's everywhere. So everyone will be watching TV. All the kids will want to watch TV in their masks. That's what they do. I still do it. I like to go and frighten my neighbours when the kids are trick-or-treating. Just mainly because I hate my neighbours. But they, it's all part of the fun of it. And it's such a shame that it is seen as this odd child, this black sheep of the family, because it's really good, and it is tons better than what came after it.
Yeah, I'll back you up on that 100%. I think, as Athena mentioned earlier, I do like the fact that it's taken from a Nigel Neal screenplay, and you do get that vibe, especially when it comes to the ending. That it's hard to describe to people these days who are incredibly jaded when it comes to horror movies, and what was once effective is now seen as just a trope kind of thing. But when you see this as a youngster, and you have no idea what's going on, all you know is that it's bad. There is something bad happening, and until those revelations start coming through, I think the atmosphere in this one is miles better to me anyway. And I'm going to be sacrificed on the altar of Myers for this, but I think it's much more atmospheric as a film than Halloween, the original.
Not a huge fan of slasher films. I've seen them all because I think it's part of, the horror genre, and being someone that runs a horror group, online, I want to know what I'm talking about. And sometimes I'm also a person who, I'm not going to lie, sometimes I'll just watch something because it's there, like my friend, he's one of those, cinematic, very into the classics and very into, the, I guess certain films, he knows his knowledge of film is just, it blows me out of the water. And then I'm a person who'll just, watch Sleepaway Camp 2 and be like, oh, I love this movie. So it's kind of funny that, I feel a little bit uncultured with my friend, and we kind of laugh about the difference between the two of us in that way. But I don't like slashers because I feel like you said they're a trope, they get overplayed. I want something to kind of shock me a little bit or make me wonder, even while Sleepaway Camp, everybody's going to get slashed. At the same time, there's sort of those plot twists about the villain and who they are and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, okay. And same with other films. Some slashers will try to kind of trick you, twist you. You're thinking it's this person is the bad person. And then it turns out to be someone else, and they've got this backstory. My only, I think, thing that I took away from Silver Shamrock with the villain was, well, I love that actor and he's amazing, so much credit for him for being also in Twin Peaks. He was Andrew Packard. Conal Cochran, I don't feel like he's very defined as a villain. I feel like in the same way that Ellie just falls into Tom's arms at the motel, Tom gets strapped to a chair and Cochran just gives him, well, here's all my evil plans. And you're kind of like, okay, why? So, like, okay, we get it. You're the villain. You look like a villain with, your suit and your even his hairdo looks like he's a villain. So he just has that villain style, but it's kind of like, okay, so you're a witch. Okay. Something about what he wanted to, do something on Sam Hain that was this great trick, and get everybody. And it's kind of like, okay, it's scary, it's creepy. The film gives you that hopelessness vibe and everything adds to that. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of the characters, Ellie, Cochran, other people in the movie, they're not really fleshed out.
No, I mean it's essentially like a big three in here with Tom Atkins and Stacey Nelkin and Dan O'Haley. I do think they do really well though. I mean, well, I'll get to you guys. What do you think to mine and everyone's favorite granddad, Tom Atkins?
I think he was fantastic. I loved him. I didn't really buy him as a doctor. Entirely, he's a bit too much of a badass. But I thought he was great in it. But yeah, Dan O'Haley, with him being OCP guy as well in RoboCop, that's my main point of reference for him is RoboCop. So it's like OCP guy is trying to kill all the kids. But I thought they did really well with what they had. There's a few bits that haven't aged well. There's a few little rough edges to the production, but it has so much charm and so much atmosphere that it's criminal that it doesn't get more respect, I think.
Yeah, I don't. I love the fact. Well, not so much love the fact, but it's just that everybody sees Dan Challis in this as this man's man, and it's not just Ellie who want to jump into it, but you kind of get that vibe later on when he's talking to his friend, and she says, "Oh, you owe me a lot of dinners," and he says, "Oh, I'm always ready for dinner with you," and you think, "My God, this guy's a
mustache."
Yeah,
it's totally the mustache. See, this is why people just fling themselves at him. Same thing with Chuck Norris. It's like, look at the manly stash. No one can compare to that. Tom, he's going to save the day because he's got the reliable tash. It's Magnum PI in a cardigan.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It makes you want to grow one and then just go and sit in a bar and have some like nubile people approach you.
Yeah,
one thing I love about
they will come up and see you with a beer and say, "Man, you've seen some things, haven't you?" Yes, but they've always been slightly obscured by my tash.
One thing I love too about Dr. Dan is he doesn't just, punch the bad guys in that film. There are sound effects where, it's not just like the punch sound effect, but it is like that comic book, Kerplowy, it goes a whole other level when he's kicking the androids back and punching them and taking off their heads. And, when he goes into that factory, you can tell he is just like a man on a mission. He's going to save the day. He is pissed off. So he goes into that factory and I guess you both remember that scene where it has the grandmother knitting, and he's yelling, "Where's the girl? Where's the girl?" And she gets knocked over and the head falls off and it rolls. And it's kind of funny. Everybody's falling into his arms at that point. He gets captured by androids and Cochran, and Cochran comes in and just, it's almost like he's as bad as Ellie and everyone else. He just falls right into Tom's arms. Like, "Let me tell you my life story. Let me talk to you. That was an android that I bought from Germany in 1706. Let's talk about it. Listen to me. Listen to all my problems. You're my new best friend." And then he locks him in this room, sticks a mask on him, and is like, "Let me tell you my life story." It's like, what? So it's like everybody sort of gravitates towards this guy thinking, oh my gosh, even the villain sets himself up to just blurt out the master plan to, maybe he wanted Tom to escape and save the day, and he was just setting it all up that way. Who knows? Everybody loves this guy.
Yeah, be honest.
And yet, when he's reacting to seeing a child die on screen, vomiting bugs and snakes, he barely reacts. He's like, oh, that's a bit rubbish.
He clenches his fists.
Oh, did he clench his fists? That's right.
Yeah.
He wanted to punch something.
But be honest. Be honest. If he walked into our respective rooms right now, we'd be the same. You just say,
Oh, Tom, hi.
yeah. I mean, even when he foils his plans at the end, he doesn't even get angry. He just
I would be so
applauds it
confused
and
if
says,
you walked in here right now, mate.
There's that guy that saved the day on Halloween 3, the hero.
yeah,
He stopped the commercial in the end, I heard.
He just walked through there. What's up, Andrew? You're like, oh, I've got to go. Something's
Terrifying
come up.
thought. I'm going to be checking for him in the night now. Just wait. I'm just popping downstairs, Claire. What's up, Andrew? I just want to see Atkins in the living room.
But even at the end of the film, when he files Cochran's plans, Cochran, he's not even angry about it. He just looks up at him, smiles, and applauds. It's like, well done, you.
Outraged admiration. I wish I could have been a man like you.
Yeah. They're holding a convention for Halloween, 45 years of Halloween this year, and they're actually releasing a Dan Challis action figure for it. And it does come with a beer.
I need to get one of those. I'm going to get one. I'll send you to a picture. He's going to sit up on like a pumpkin shelf I have, and he'll be the star of the show because, I mean, that's where he belongs.
Fantastic.
Front and center, featured with that beer, smiling and saying, you don't mess with him.
Have either of you two guys seen Night of the Creeps?
I have.
Oh, many years ago, yeah.
God, that's another Tom Atkins masterclass.
Yeah, I can't think of anything I've seen him in that I didn't enjoy. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of those B movies, and it's funny that, you read what the critics say, and they can be merciless, and especially on films where it's obviously really to entertain you, and to enjoy what they do have when something isn't a huge budget, or there's production issues, or they don't have certain big name stars or directors. But I think that, you're going to see that with critics no matter what. I think they always are going to find some problem with something. So I think that I love that you both take what you love out of, this film and the other films like we were talking about.
This is why I love doing this show, because studios and general audiences will often, just on, poor word of mouth or a review, not even seeing the film, will write something off. And I love that these movies that we love, they can hold up decades and decades after any big blockbuster has long since faded into the mists of time, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
With regards to the acting, what we've not really gone into her as much. Stacey Nelkin as Ellie Grimbridge. What are your thoughts on old Stacey?
I think she's sweet in the movie, and her character, since Dr. Dan is everything in that movie, and the man's man and the guy's guy, we get to see him and his beer are basically the main characters. But she did a great job, and she did that sort of damsel in distress and that noir, darkness to her. I love that. She had a lot of that going on, and she reminded me a little of the character in Blade Runner, that, oh, I need your help, or a 1930s detective story where she comes in and needs, Dr. Dan to save the day. So she did a great job of, her role, and she has a lot of her strengths in that film, but because it's so heavily featured on Dan, running to save her, and she's he doesn't say, oh, where's my girlfriend or my woman? It's, oh, where's the girl? She ends up becoming a little bit of a what do you call it, like the rescue piece, the prize he needs to capture again or get back or whatever. And it's interesting, that they, spoiler alert here, she's ended up becoming the android, and he has to defeat her too, because punching solves everything. So I feel like she didn't get enough screen time But I also think with the way the movie moves, and watching that recently again before the podcast to get prepared, it's very fast paced, like an action film. So I think she just didn't have time to do more than the damsel in distress and then the android that turns on him. You know, she didn't have, they couldn't flesh her out more than what they gave her.
Yeah. Andrew?
I do think she handles it well with what she's got, and for the most part, Ellie's a really good character. But I was going to mention one shot earlier in which involves Ellie, which completely took me out of it, which was when she has, spoiler alert, been beheaded and revealed to be an android right at the end. There's a shot where her head looks at her body, and it's so comedic. It looks like Crichton from Red Dwarf. It's just, it doesn't sit well. She had this brutal fight. You know, there's the severed arm in the car that then attacks Dr. Challis, but he tears her head off. She dies, and well, the body dies, and then it cuts to that shot where Ellie is completely buried, so you can just see her head, and she's just a severed head, glaring at her ruined robot body, and the expression that she's got in that shot is just like, bugger. Didn't mean for that to happen. It's not like frightening or dead, or it's just like, oh no, oh you've taken my head off. That took me out of it, but I liked her in it other than that.
There is an argument that's running still to this day about when exactly Ellie became an android. Did she do it when she was kidnapped, or was she an android all the way through? And they've asked Tommy Lee Wallace with regards to this, and he doesn't know either. So, with regards to you guys, what do you think is the state of play with that? Was she always an android, or do you think she was swapped out?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, we all know for certain that Tom saved the day. There's like no, question about that. But was Ellie an android is a whole other mystery. I think it was fun to think she is, and that, it was all a setup to draw him in, because there's, so many unanswered questions in that film, because it would kind of be like, then why would she go and draw him into all that mystery and do that in the first place? What would be that connection? Was it supposed to go that way for the ritual? Who even knows? So I mean, it's kind of cool to think that she was. I like to think that the real Ellie was somewhere in the background.
They had sex, though.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I don't. Well, I mean, didn't they in Blade Runner? Or am I thinking of a different movie?
Let's be honest. I mean, Dan Challis is obviously such a, what you would say, master swordsman. He would know, surely.
Even AI. Maybe we should invite Tom on this show and ask him and be like, so if Ellie was an android, how did that work?
I have tried so many times through Tom's agent to get him on this show.
This is an important question we need to have answered.
Oh. See, I watched this with my wife earlier, and I was thinking the same thing. If she isn't an android, why bother with the entire ruse of getting Dan involved in this? And because her father showed up at the hotel, my wife came up with the theory that Cochran's just wanting to see how much he knows. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I think Cochran almost acts a little bit like he knows Dan. So maybe he was watching Dan. Maybe there's more to those two than, Dan seems so thrown into everything and just handles it by, acting like, just pressing forward and handling everything by drop kicking everyone. But Cochran just acts so casual with him. So maybe he did set it up. Maybe
Challis is an android.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Oh, God, we're getting into Ridley Scott territory now. We'll leave that.
So we find out in the end.
And the episode grew by an hour.
I know. Yeah. We didn't know. I mean, that is some Black Mirror level stuff going on.
He put the phone down after getting that last commercial turned off, and there was a little folded paper unicorn.
He says, I've got to stand here, otherwise my charger's not long enough.
Right. So, yeah, you brought it up a little earlier, Andrew, with regards to the effects, and I think this is where, if anything, it kind of falls down a little.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Especially with the laser effects, which have dated really badly.
Yes. I do think the makeup on Marge when she has the misfire is still quite well done. It's still effective.
Yes.
Although apparently the actress, that wasn't the actress in the mask. She refused to get in the mask for that, so someone had to stand in for her. But yeah, when it comes to the latex effects and things like that, I still think it holds up incredibly well. Less so the as you mentioned earlier, the robot Ellie.
Yes. That was a bit silly, but I see what they were trying to do with the movie. I mean, the one that stuck out to me as being still effective was when the kid falls victim to it, and you got the bugs and the snakes and things coming out. Of course, he's got the mask on, but the parts of his face that are still visible, which are a practical effect, are still quite convincing underneath. And I would imagine that the lady that was in Lucia Fulci's City of the Living Dead was very jealous that they used a prosthetic for that instead of making her vomit sheep's innards out of her actual mouth.
Yes.
So that was quite convincing. Although there's some stretching around the mouth that you could see it's latex towards the end of a couple of shots, but that was really convincing. I think that's aged pretty well.
Yeah, I'm less convinced with the hoist by his own petard Cochran at the end, where he turns into that like kind of almost angelic white.
There's also that brief shot where he's melting like the dude from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, his demise is really strange. I mean, the way that all the androids too are taken out, when they drop everything and it just, it's interesting. It's kind of cool because he's going through that, the factory almost like a character in a side-scrolling action game, just, getting everything done. And then there's the big villain fight. But I would say that part with Cochran is a little bit like, okay, he has to go now. His home planet needs him. And it's just also left a little bit like, what? So yeah, there's just some scenes in there that are strange, but I would also say that scene is still really powerful, where the mask almost looks too like it's melting on the kid. Like he looks like he's melting. And the way they have that actor fall over just adds to it with his movements. That was really, really powerful and amazing. So, and especially when you're a little kid and you already are going to have a fear of bugs and snakes, and, that's going to be amplified. That is powerful. Rewatching that, watching that scene with Marge, what struck me still as the most gruesome wasn't even like her eye, exploding and the blood and all that. It was a scene where that insect crawls up her face and goes into her hair was the most terrifying to me.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah,
like
especially
when you see the cockroach just coming out in Creep Show.
Oh
Yeah.
God!
Oh,
don't get me started on that one. Oh Jesus! So yeah, that leads us into the direction. And what did you think to Tommy Lee Wallace's direction on this?
I liked it. I thought it was pretty strong. It did. He tried some different things that did separate it from being quite so much of a straightforward action movie with like a sci-fi horror element. And I think he tried to not emulate Carpenter's style, but elongate some shots. There was a bit more time for tension to build up. I mean, it's not a particularly long film. It doesn't take too long to get where it's going. But there's some shots that are held a little bit longer, which is a bit of a Carpenter thing to do, just to linger on the building dread. Is there something going to come around this corner? Is there going to be a jump scare? And elongating things a little bit makes you less aware of when that scare is going to come. I think that was something I picked up on rewatching it today. That there were some nice little direction parts there. That could well be the editor, to be honest. That could be the editing rather than the on-set direction.
There was one little sequence that stood out for me. The little tracking shot. Once when Dan gets what turns out to be Robot Ellie, and they're trying to escape from the factory, and the lighting in the corridor and the tracking shot as it's following down, it's very oppressive, and I think that was a very effective little sequence of shots with regards to that one.
Yeah, I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah.
Lighting plays
Just
such a big role in these things.
oh gosh, yeah. One thing I will mention, the section where he throws even while he's tied there, he throws the mask on the security camera.
And it goes over perfectly.
Yeah, well, it was actually done. It took over 48. It took over 40 takes to get that shot. Tommy Lee Wallace revealed during the cast 2015 reunion that the scene took longer than he expected. And what was so infuriating is that when he was, describing how the shot should take place, during that little section, he playfully tossed the mask and it caught on the camera on the first try. So, yeah, it then took another 40 odd takes to get that. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. So, what about you, Athena? Anything you've got with notes with regards to the direction?
I think that the director had a lot of fun with this movie for, as hopeless as the feeling is, for as we get this feeling of, constant dread that there's always that plot twist of something's bad, something's wrong, something is about to happen. He keeps it really upbeat in a way that's, really interesting because it's still, the characters continue to press on and, yeah, he has a lot of fun with it. With almost every single scene, he's sort of saying, while some stuff, as we talked about, does go over the top, I think that it's almost like a horror film done joyfully.
Nice. So, I mean, with regards to this, we've looked at pretty much most things. Do you think it deserves its cult classic status? And
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about you, Andrew? Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. It doesn't get enough respect, this.
There was a rumor of one of the shots. Have you seen Halloween Ends, Andrew, by the way?
No, I haven't seen any of the most recent 3 because I'm so bored of Michael Myers, to be honest.
Yeah. I will say I'm not a big fan of the Myers movies, but I did like this last trilogy, and both Mike and myself, we're one of the people that actively do defend Halloween Ends. We think it's a good one. We think it's unfairly like this. It's unfairly maligned. But there was a rumor.
Give it a go.
Yeah, it's worth it. You might sit there and go, what the. Halfway through, but it's worth a couple of hours of your time. But the weird thing is there was a rumor. I'm not sure how far it got that during the scripting section, when there's a scene with regards to like a radio tower, and the rumor was that during the scripting, at the end. Michael dies near this radio tower, and at that point, it cuts to the Silver Shamrock factory in Santa Mira, and the production line starts pumping out Myers masks. How far that got?
I like that.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Nice.
That would have. Yeah, I would have. It would have instantly, put it right up there. Unfortunately, it didn't go with it. So, aside from having a couple of masks from this one in the recent trilogy, there's not really much of a link. So it still remains kind of the isolated entry in the series, and I think it's unfair. So yeah, I think we've pretty much covered everything. But before we do move on, is there anything either of you think that we may have missed that warrants attention?
I think we covered everything, and we, left questions too for the viewers who do decide to give it a watch, who haven't seen it yet, or decide to, watch it again for this time of year and enjoy it, or, or decide to reach out to people online if they say, oh, I want to see what people are saying about it on YouTube or on Facebook or whatever, and or decide to throw up, hey, I'm watching this, and post a picture on Instagram. You never know who you're going to, inspire to say, oh, yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the theories in it. And that could be a lot of fun for people. I think that's much more entertaining with everything going on in the world. Have some fun and get involved in some mystery. And I think this movie's a good opportunity for it.
I love that. I love that. That's a
I have
fantastic
a lot of
attitude.
love for John Carpenter. I love John Carpenter, but I do think this one is my favourite of the Halloween movies personally. And anyone that hasn't seen it, I do urge you to check it out. Even though it doesn't have Michael Myers in it, it's well worth a watch. It is something very different. And come on, be a completist, see all of them. He says, having not watched the last trilogy.
Awesome. Well, as usual, we'll go now straight into our favourite character, line, and scene from today's movie, and we'll start with favourite character. So, Athena, who's your favourite character in this one, and why?
My favorite character is Dr. Dan, because at the end he yells, "Stop it!" And it's just so classic, because it's almost like it reminds me of Charlton Heston in Planet of the Apes screaming, "Oh, you animals!" It's really iconic. And and for being a cult film that doesn't have the greatest reviews, that has gotten bad mouth, the way that he does it and the expression on his face just makes the whole movie for me. That I know that I'm going to watch the movie and enjoy it, but the ending is the part that's going to be that we've waited for that big giveaway, and there it is. He's screaming on the phone, is he going to save the day? Here's Dr. Dan, the superhero. What's he going to do? So I would say that that's my favorite line in character.
Fantastic. And what about you, Andrew? Who's your MVP in this one?
Aside from Dr. Dan's mustache, who by far is the greatest thing in the film, I'm not to be awkward, but I really liked the androids, because for the most part of the movie, until the yellow gunk starts getting pumped out of it and start pulling wires out, it's not obvious what they are. Are they Men in Black type of characters? Are they androids? Are they aliens? And they're so cold when they're crushing heads and whatnot. They're so cold, and then they just wipe their hand on the curtain or just drop the body and just wander off. It's quite a striking visual. The smart suits, the slick hair, and the dead expressions. It is a little bit like watching a party political broadcast, but it's also quite creepy. Well, just as creepy as watching a party political broadcast. I really like the androids, especially because they didn't talk. That makes them creepier.
I do love the fact that you can get, say, 3/4 of the way through this and still not have an idea as to what's going on until those revelations start coming. And I think that's why it's so effective. It's not just a guy in a mask. It keeps you guessing, and I love that. So, my favorite character, I don't see how it could be anyone but Dan Challis. I mean, it's not that he's pretty much the only standout protagonist, but it's also down to his traits and the way Atkins plays him. I mean, he's far from perfect. His flaws are blatantly center stage, but he doesn't pretend to be anything other than what he is. And all the mysteries in the world is not going to stop him from his lifestyle choices. And I love that. So to me, it's Challis every time.
Dan Challis. You've got to say it. You've got to say it with a dramatic, like an explosion behind you. I'd imagine when he walks out of the bathroom in the morning, there's a big explosion behind him. And he just looks back over one shoulder, gives a smirk.
I would imagine that's just
job
Tom Atkins
done well.
in general. Okay, so what's your favourite line then, Andrew?
It's got to be the same as Athena, where he's just yelling, "Turn it off!" When he's trying to get him to stop it at the end, because the repetition again. Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Then it doesn't. And that's the same one for me. That's
Nice.
the same for me. Before that, aside from that, I think possibly when Cochran is giving his life story, oh, this was 3,000 years ago.
You don't really know much about Halloween.
You thought no further than the strange custom of having your children wear masks and go out begging for candy. It was the start of the year in our old Celtic lands, and we'd be waiting in our houses of wattles and clay. The barriers would be down, you see, between the real and the unreal. And the dead might be looking in to sit by our fires of turf. Halloween. The festival of Samhain. The last great one took place 3,000 years ago, and the hills ran red with the blood of animals and children.
More of the Irish accent comes out, and you know, the facade slips, and you get a bit of a look at what he is, you know, some form of ancient being, and you get, you know, oh, this is more primal. This isn't your modern thing. This speaks to something more primal and far darker that you don't understand. And you know, it talks about Samhain and the origins of what's going on, but never really gives everything away. And I thought that was kind of powerful. But yeah, it's got to be turn it off.
Nice. I'm in contradiction to your guys' choice. Although, you know, you touched upon it, Andrew. I do love the line.
Mr. Cochran was right, you know. I do love a good joke, and this is the best ever. A joke on the children.
There's something terrifically creepy about the way he says that. So I have to go with that one myself. So
alternatively, you could always go for, so where do you want to sleep?
if you're not careful, Michael edit it. So that is your favourite line.
Go for your life, man.
So what's your favourite scene? And again, I'll start with you, Athena.
Oh my gosh, there's a few. Oh, that's hard to pick one. You know, scariest, obviously, when the child's mask starts melting, and that one is just so well done. And the child actor, did a great job falling over. And I think he's a little bit bratty too in that scene. So you're kind of like, oh, this brat, and then, whoa, okay, didn't need to see that happen. Well, the ending scene is so iconic, you know. I'm trying to think if there's one that I would say is just my favorite. I would say it's when he walks into the room, the one that I would give like the one that I'm really, really enjoy and that I look forward to seeing and it sticks with me too, is, and he sees the grandmother knitting and he's yelling, okay, you know, where's the girl? Where's Ellie? Thinking, okay, this is this plot against him and they took her and he has to, you know, interrogate everybody. And he doesn't realize it's an android. They did a good job with how, you know, lifelike all of the androids are. I know Andrew talked about that earlier where you think, okay, are they aliens? And it reminds me a little bit of the movie Phantasm, where you're thinking, okay, who is this guy? He's got that dark suit, that just pressing forward attitude, that coldness, that cruelty of everybody. And he's just out there. He's, you know, he's slashing everyone, but it doesn't have slasher film because you're like, wait a minute, where's this guy from? What does he want? What's he doing? Why is he doing this? You know, why is he doing it with so much evil behind him? So I would say that I like the way that, you know, when he knocks over that, or the android falls over, the grandmother who is knitting, you know, he starts to watch those wheels turn and the movie focuses in on that. So you're looking at these wheels turning and then Tom, you know, gets captured shortly after, but there's sort of this look of confusion on his face. And it's, you know, you might want to stereotype Dr. Dan as the man's man who's like, wait, what's going on here? This isn't something I can punch and kick. So it's kind of cool in a way, though, that you're like, you're still trying to figure it out. So I would say that's a scene that's probably my favorite out of all of them.
Cool. What about you, Andrew?
On a far less thoughtful and well-measured note than Athena's, I would say when the two droids grab hold of the drunk that knows something is afoot with the factory and pull his head off. There is, once they've removed his head and thrown it aside, there is a remarkably satisfying thud as it lands off camera. And I thought, oh, that was nicely done. So that really stuck out for me rewatching it today. But aside from that, all the obvious ones like the melting mask, the the advert getting played over and over again. I liked the also like towards the end when he's trying to get the station shut down, and you see the ads start to go out, and it starts to get to the bit with the flashing effect that causes it to happen. And I loved the tension in that. You know, is he going to do it or not? But yeah, that and someone getting his head ripped off, because I am that shallow.
I struggled with this one at first because there are quite a few iconic scenes, but watching it today, it struck me. And my favorite scene now is the Halloween evening montage. It takes you out of the small confines of Santa Mira and shows you just how far the problems spread. You know, it cuts to Dayton, Ohio, and New York and Omaha, and how screwed everyone is. And despite all the revelations that you've just had, that's when the full horror of the situation hits you. And that just gets to me every time. So yeah, I'm going to go with that one.
It's like a Stephen King sort of moment, isn't it? That one.
It is, and it's not a memorable scene, but watching it today, that's where it strikes a chord for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll give our final scores in a moment. But as you regular listeners know, before that happens, we come to you out there in the real world to see what you think of this one with our audience participation section. And holy shit, did you guys not disappoint with this one? In all my time here at Mike's Podcasts, we have never, and I mean never, had such an overwhelming response to an audience participation section. We were inundated with your opinions, good and bad, so much so that I had to draft in our regular guest / co-host Sandy Evenson for this one. So without further ado, quite a few this time, Sandy, huh?
There are a bunch.
Yeah, I do have to add that if we don't read your response, please do not be disheartened. We went through and read every single one of your responses, and the only reason we couldn't include them is for time. Otherwise, we'd be another 30 minutes on this one alone. Isn't that right?
Right.
So, yeah, over to you, Sandy.
Well, some people just gave their scores, and so I thought I'd start there and then go into the more thoughtful responses. And we're starting at the low point. Some people just did not care for this film at all and gave it a 0, including John Campbell and Greg Budzinski, who said it's just not good horror, but he admits the best part is the music. And we found that in a lot of negative responses. A lot of people really did like the music. Giving it a 2.5 was Harry Koslowski Doyle, and giving it a 3 were Phil Jones and Andrew Manley. 3.5 was given by Mark Small. He said it's his favorite Halloween movie, and Rob Hall also gave it a 3.5. Giving it a solid 4.0 were Sean Roberts and Terrence Twite. And giving it a 4.5, Timothy Benedict, Thomas Emerson, Joseph Lee, stating it was just too short, and Travis Spain. Now, a 4.8 was given by Daniel Porter in true Sandy fashion. And then of the 5s, we have a ton of people who just, wanted to basically say that they felt it was a 5 out of 5 stars, but didn't have a lot of things to expand on. And that's John Bisco Taft. Jason Smith said most definitely a 5. John Chirico, Tony Chirico, Jesse McLaughlin, Ben Walker, Dawn Nicole, Vim Fuego, Matt Chapman, Harold Pridemore, Robert Smooth, Kelly Gormley, Corey Daniel Foster, Fred Bucci, Amanda Ruiz, Derek Tate, Bart Barris, Eric Thompson, Ray Blanchett, Scott Spalding, Wayne Weisenunt, Aiden Vara, Bobby Lee Stamper, Martin McCrae, Cog Harnum, Keith Wallenberg, Stephen Goswell, Benjamin James, Bonnie Guillot, Kenneth Bowers, Tim Walker, Travis Baker, Stephen Giroux, Frank Vickers, Amy Rhodes Childs, Mark Horn, Richard Alfaro. And then this one's extra special. Keith McCoy gave it 5 out of 5 pumpkins. So that sets it apart. Some people who did give it a 5 did comment they felt that the film's misunderstood, that was a significant thing to them. So some more thorough responses. And by the way, DK was mentioning on Facebook and everything, just very thankful for that response. That was a lot of people just to begin with giving us that. Richard Alfaro, he said they should do sequels, prequels, spin-offs, a TV series, cartoons, and comic books based on Halloween 3. I love the way they mixed in elements of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy in one movie. And obviously he gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, stating he loves it. W. Duke White liked it because it was dark and nihilistic. Aaron Harper gave it a 3.5 out of 5. He said it was a solid 80s movie for something different. And Andrew Thomas Mohammed felt it was the best of the entire Halloween franchise. Although that sparked a bit of debate, I see. Brett Freeman said he really enjoyed it. Elliot Cutler, love it. The music and the feel of the film just takes me back to the 80s. This, The Fog, and The Creep Show are my Halloween night films alone, also with Simpsons Halloweens. Steen Loyens says it's criminally underrated. He loves the fact that more and more people do seem to realize that each year, yet I'm still a little sad they didn't follow up on the anthology idea. Stephen Leonard says it's the only Halloween he watches. And Bill Paria, I love Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. It should have just been titled Season of the Witch. Then people who are diehard Michael fans wouldn't have been so upset. I think it has a great story and tells it very well. He gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And that's something that was echoed also by someone else, stating that they also, missed Michael Myers being in it. John Lupin says it's the second best Halloween of the franchise. If you don't believe it, you don't believe it, but move on. It's probably one of the best horror films of our time. The concept alone, absolutely brilliant. Still applicable and even more so for this day and age. Just watched it, starting out my 31 days of horror. Whitney Moore was the one who echoed the previous sentiment. It should have been called Season of the Witch. Still a great flick, though. A lot of people did talk about how they really wanted to know what Carpenter had planned, like Darian Byron and Damien Heaft, Scott Spencer. All thought it was a good movie, but they were just lamenting that franchise didn't continue.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Brian Ruff, the same. He said 5 of 5, great movie. I wish the Halloween franchise went the anthology route instead of focusing on just Michael Myers. And Andrew Mitso, again, the earlier sentiment. If it wasn't called Halloween 3 and just called Season of the Witch, it would be a hidden gem or cult classic like Night of the Comet. Chris Gibson says he absolutely loved it. He knows it gets overlooked a lot with the Michael Myers series, but as a standalone in the series, it's a fantastic 5 stars. Josh Carter says best sequel in the franchise still to this day. This is one I was looking for. Lucy Horton. She said she hated it the first couple of times she saw it, thinking, how can you have a Halloween film without Michael Myers? But she's seen it a few times fairly recently and found it a very enjoyable film. So I think people who've discounted it over the years because of that might want to give it another watch, because that's super prevalent in a lot of these comments. Bill Riley gave it a 5. He said, I love this movie. The soundtrack is great. It's an interesting concept, and it has a dark and haunting ending. Perfection. Brian Collett, 4.5. said, I just didn't like the robot puppets. I wish they could have come up with something else. But I really did like the story and understand that Halloween was supposed to be a series of anthologies about different aspects. A group of witches sacrificing the children on Halloween, what's not to like? Brian Freeman gave it 4.5 out of 5, saying, I never understood the hate. Andrew Barry says 4 out of 5, underrated classic. Not a Michael Myers film, a Halloween film. Myers does not have the monopoly on the word. An excellent film.
Somewhere Mike's gnashing his teeth.
Mikey Ham, 5 out of 5, loved it. It's one I go back and watch over and over and don't get bored of, but I can understand those that aren't a fan for obvious reasons. Steve Miles loves the movie score and says it needs to be watched as a standalone and not part of the Michael Myers story. The last few we have here, Jason Griffith, he was one that gave it a 4.5. He said, a great pace movie as opposed to others in the franchise. Great evil plot helps to make it a cult classic with a great fan base. Andrus L. Mailers says he gave it 5 stars. One of my all-time favorites. Saw it on the big screen when it first came out and loved it right away because of how different it was. One I watch every year during the Halloween season since the days of VHS. Plus, one of the greatest scores for a horror movie. Lightfield Lewis, it is the final Halloween movie in the actual trilogy. I look at it like a band's concept album that didn't match the success of the tried and true formula, but it's become something special over time. I actually saw it in the theater when it came out, and the audience was waiting for Michael Myers the entire film until he shows up on the TV screen in a scene with Tom Atkins in the bar. He expands on that a little bit further. And Brian Hills, last but not least. I liked it because of what it was. Halloween 1 and 2 should have been it. No more Michael Myers. So a 5 for me. It was interesting and creepy all on its own. Wish we could have got more of that, those changed themes. So another one for that anthology series. And that is all I have for you today.
That's nice. That's quite the broad range of views, but I think, you know, mostly it's been seen in a positive light all these years later.
And especially as, you know, a holiday themed movie, so to speak, for the Halloween season. Seems to get a lot of people into the mood.
Definitely. I'm one of them. So I just want to thank you, Sandy. Thank you for coming in and dropping an absolute truckload of feedback on us. I'm sure, it was a bit difficult to sort through, but thank you. And no doubt we'll hear your dulcet tones once again soon.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Y'all have fun.
All right. Thanks. Once again, thank you to everyone out there for being kind enough to share your thoughts with us. And again, I'm really sorry if you didn't hear your name on this one. We really just had so many this time. It was difficult to narrow it down. Just please know that your thoughts were very much appreciated, as were some of the photos this time. I'm going to give a special shout out to Justin Cubby Omley on the group on the photo where he stood in the presence of giants. I'm not envious at all, Justin. So, thank you all for taking part. You've demonstrated once more that this is as much your show as it is ours, and we're incredibly grateful for your interaction. So, please keep it coming. And now we know what you think out there. It's time for us here to give our final thoughts on this one with our conclusion and score out of 5. So this time we'll go ladies first and start with Athena. What are your final thoughts on Halloween 3 and your score out of 5, please?
I'm going to be very daring and say something that's going to shock everyone. I think outside of the first Halloween film, this is the best one in the series. So the first one is always going to be a standalone, nothing seen like it. Some of the scenes in it just shook me to the core, where Laurie's going house to house because Michael's after her and he's relentless, and someone turns off the lights. And I mean, that shook me, where, they weren't just doing the cruelty of Michael after her and that all her friends had just been, viciously murdered, was that someone would be cold enough to say, okay, well, no, we're not home, go away. I think that Halloween 3 keeps in that sort of creepiness and coldness of feeling like there's no hope, like, you're on the run and something's going to get you and it's after you and you don't know what does it want, what is it, it has something maybe supernatural to it, and that you're not going to win against it. There's nothing you can do except just keep running forward and hope someone is going to save the day. So I would say, it does have its flaws, being, not having the budget, not having Michael Myers, who was everyone's, back in the 80s too, when it was made, everybody wanted franchise villains. It's what the audience demanded. And we still do a little bit of that today, but we are constantly looking for original films because we've gotten bored. And we grow increasingly bored, I think, as people, where we want new things, especially with anything creative, with art, music, and film, since it feels like everything's just been done. So, despite some of the things we had touched on, like the laser, things looked outdated, some of the special effects, aren't the greatest today and maybe weren't the greatest back then, I would give it 4 out of 5.
Nice. And what about you, Andrew? What's your thoughts, final thoughts, and score for this one?
So I'm there with Athena on many points there. Not just because I don't want to say much, because that was a really good assessment of it that Athena's just given. But I really enjoyed this. I do think it holds up better than the other slasher-centric movies in the series. The first one is great. Second one has some great moments, but I do think this is my favorite out of the series. And I did watch things like The Return of Michael Myers and Halloween 5 and The Curse of Michael Myers. I'm just thinking this is just diminishing returns. I liked H2O, didn't like Resurrection, but then who did? But present company, etc. You may love it, I don't know. But I really enjoyed this one, and revisiting it for this was a pleasure. It has the effects have dated, the style of it is dated, but the atmosphere of it hasn't in the slightest, because it is just really effective as a creepy, atmospheric film that's slightly ambiguous as to what's actually going on. But when those little layers of the mystery are being uncovered by Dr. Dan Stache, Challis, not Dan Stache, but close enough. That makes it more interesting and more compelling, and you get drawn into the driving force of him trying to stop that advert going out at that time. I think it pulls you in really well. Like I said, I talked about the sound design a lot, and I loved that. It is not perfect, but there's some of the shots we talked about, and the sudden intimacy moments, the sudden intimate moments that come out of nowhere, really. So I would give it a solid 4 out of 5.
Fantastic. Okay, I've written mine here, so bear with me. But I know it's considered heresy, and somewhere my silver screen co-host Mike is having a case of the vapors at this. But to me, this is the very best Halloween movie in the franchise. I'm sure that we'll have many discounting my view, thinking I might crack or something, but I unapologetically dig this. It's Hill and Carpenter's original vision for the franchise, and had the studio not intervened in the process of the first sequel, I love the idea that this would have been an anthology series. I love Michael Myers as much as the next guy, but this was the first Halloween movie I saw, and after something as monumental as this, a deranged killer with a knife just seems like small potatoes to me. I'm aware I'm in the minority, and to most people this one is a joke, but I love it. It's cheesy in the way that only 80s horror can be, with its threadbare plotting, occasional soap opera dialogue, and sometimes wonky effects, but it has an oppressive vibe that really puts you on edge throughout. And in that respect, I feel the production very much succeeded in making what they would class a pod movie. The first time you watch this, especially when young, you're not sure where this is going. And when the revelations come, they come thick and fast. And even now, the thing makes me shudder. Couple that with the Carpenter Howard score, which to my mind is second to none, and it has an atmosphere all its own. And that ending, oof. It's unfairly maligned due to circumstance and the fact that it doesn't feature Myers, despite the vast majority of the Myers films coming after this one, but to me, this will always be a classic. And I still stand by the assertion that had it not been a Halloween movie, or the ones that followed after had continued with the anthology, and simply not chased after a quick buck, it would be seen in a much better light. And I happily stand with those fellow diehard fans that rate this highly. Give me Cochran over the Shape any day of the week, but especially on Halloween. And I've given it 4 out of 5, which, funnily enough, gives Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, a combined score of 4 out of 5. So how do you guys feel about that? Fair assessment, do you think?
I think so.
I'd say so.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, considering it's now over 40 years old, and we, as well as a good portion of our audience, have had so many good things to say about it, despite its negative reception upon release, I'd state that to keep so many people enthusiastic, even now, with hindsight, I don't think it could be considered a failure.
No, not at all.
Great. Well, all that's left to do now is thank our guests for joining me today. So I'd like to thank both Athena and Andrew for jumping in on this one. Have you guys enjoyed yourselves?
I
No,
did.
it's been like pulling teeth, man. Talking to you, it's like, you know, replacing my entire outer skin with razors. I cannot stand your company.
I think if you had,
sorry,
if
I
we
mean,
had
yeah, it's great.
Dr. Dan, if we had Dr. Dan here, I don't think you'd be saying that.
No.
No. If we had Dr. Dan here, it would be a
punched
whole
into
other
oblivion.
We'd not be
Mush.
speaking to each other for a
They'd be-
start. We'd all just be trying to get the attention of Dr. Dan.
Tell us more, Dr. Dan.
No, I've had a great time, mate. Thanks ever so much for having me on.
Oh, anytime, mate. Would either of you be willing to come back and subject yourselves to another episode should the
If
opportunity
it is
present itself?
another horror movie,
Oh, hell yeah.
absolutely. And anything David Lynch, I'm here.
Oh, well. Watch this space. So we'll see what we can do with regards to that. In the meantime, I'm going to go over to you guys. Where can the listeners find you? Find more of your work, or just reach out to you on social media? What about you, Athena?
If you want to join our horror group, it's That Horror Group Part 2. So we decided to be a little cheesy and add a Part 2 to the group title. So look us up on Facebook and come on there. And there's also a Halloween 3 Season of the Witch Facebook group. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, so you can just look me up under Athena Williams, but I'm not on there as much. I really just like to get on there and talk about horror movies is a huge thing for me.
Fantastic. And what about you, Andrew? Where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on most socials as at Andrew Haunt. That's Andrew Haunt with a W. You can find my books, including my current one, VHS 8, My Brain Revised Edition, over on Amazon. And you can find me on YouTube. My channel is actually at Andrew Haunt on YouTube, but my show is called Planet Hex. So check that out on there. I talk about a lot of cult movies and stuff.
Cool. Well, as always, I'll get the links from you guys and we'll get them in the description. So anybody, wanting to stalk you can find you easily.
Cool.
Thanks,
Nice.
man.
So as for you out there, if you're wanting in for a future episode, be it for Cult Classics, Silver Screen, or our sister Star Trek podcast, then as always, please get in touch either in the comments section or on our social media. We may be rapidly approaching the end of this season of Cult Classics, but fingers crossed, we'll be back next year to look at more weird and obscure favourites. So like, subscribe, spread the word. And if you're so inclined, please consider leaving us a small tip in our Ko-fi account. Like I said last time, we don't do this because it's easy. We do it because we thought it would be easy. We'll be back soon to round out this season. I can't say exactly what with, as things are still being reshuffled. But we hope to at least pick up a Wonka bar before we're done. So stay subscribed, follow us on social media, and we'll be back with another strange one before you know it. We hope to see you there. Until then, it's time for the big giveaway. So put on your mask, kids, gather round, and watch the magic pumpkin. Watch.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
You have been listening to the Silver Screen Podcast, hosted by Michael Wilson and DK. Created, produced, and edited by Michael Wilson. Behind the scenes sections and additional material produced by DK. Music by Timeless Journey. More information can be found at soundcloud.com/timelessjourney. Follow the podcast on Instagram at Silver Screen Podcast, or look for the Silver Screen Podcast under Facebook groups. Links to all our social media accounts and more are in this episode's description. This podcast is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Just look for Silver Screen, Hit or Miss Star Trek. This has been a Mike's Podcast production. Copyright 2022. Thank you for listening.
Hey there, fellow Trekkies. I'm Mike.
And I'm your co-host DK.
And together we're your guides through the vast universe of Star Trek.
That's right. On Hit or Miss Star Trek, we're exploring the entire galaxy, from the classic series to the latest movies and everything in between.
We're bringing you honest, but always respectful reviews of your favourite episodes and movies. We're not afraid to ask the tough questions or share our candid thoughts, but we do it with the love and respect this franchise deserves.
Plus, we've got some fantastic guests on board. You'll hear from fellow Trekkies, social media sensations, and even some people working within the Star Trek universe.
We had a blast talking about our favourite Star Trek moments with guests like Picard production designer Dave Blass, animated series writer Fred Bronson, and so many more. And of course there's the geeking out. We can't help it, we're Trekkies through and through. We'll dive into the minutiae of the Trek universe, debate the Prime Directive, and laugh about the best bloopers.
It's all about the camaraderie here. We're building a community of Starfleet fans who share our passion and enthusiasm. We're not just a podcast, we're a crew.
So join us on the Hit or Miss Star Trek YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's explore the final frontier together. Subscribe now and remember, whether it's a hit or a miss, it's always an adventure when you're part of Starfleet.